It is the 31st millennium. The Great Crusade has shaken the stars. Worlds have been brought to heel, nations shattered, hope forged anew under the banners of the Imperium. The Emperor of mankind, in his vision and might, has united humanity across 1,000 light years. The Legiones Astartes, genetically engineered warriors beyond mortal ken, carry his word to the farthest reaches. But even as humanity rises, it falters. Even as banners are raised, brother turns upon brother. The Horus heresy has torn the dream apart, a civil war of betrayal and madness that spreads like rot through the Imperium's veins. In this time of great ruin, legions are shattered, fleets lost, oaths broken, worlds meant to be brought into the light are left to burn in the darkness. This is the fate of one such world, a world not lost to the traitor, nor saved by the loyalist, but abandoned. Here, stranded and forgotten, a fragment of humanity endures. Here, the first sons begin their long walk through the dust, through fire, through memory. The Sun's Beginning. A band of 50 Ultramarines was dispatched to the frontier world of Velkara, a vast world of red and orange sands, twin suns blazing in a merciless sky, and storms of dust and lightning that could peel flesh from bone. The people of Velkara were deeply cultured and well adapted to their harsh world. The Ultramarines, led by Captain Urite and Lieutenant Solkar, found them open to imperial compliance after meeting with the world's administrators. Though Velkara had little wealth to offer, its tithes would consist of tapestries woven from desert cloth, skilled warriors among its people, precious red iron mined from deep beneath the dunes. Few shipments left the world before calamity struck. The Ultramarines were called to retreat, summoned toward Terra to defend the throne. But before they could depart, a great warp storm swallowed the sector whole. The fleet above Velkara was annihilated by the traitor legions. The sky, once painted by the twin suns, turned sickly and wrong. Captain Urite and his men, trapped, isolated, did not falter. They retreated to the capital hive of Methana, a grand city adorned by statues of fire-bearers, now cloaked in the endless red dust. They found refuge in a cathedral, not a fortress of regal imperial grandeur, but a sanctuary of simplicity and survival. There, they were greeted by an elder priest, a man of wisdom, untouched by despair. "Greetings, sons of Gilliman," he said. Urite, in respect, knelt before him. "We seek shelter and a place to rebuild our wills." The old man smiled and motioned them inside. Inside, incense and candlelight filled the air. A mural of a vast storm stretched across the ceiling. 50 warriors, once gods among men, now stand battered and sand-caked, entered and laid down their burdens. Their armor overheated, their joints stiff with dust, their bolters clogged. The desert had found a match in even the mightiest of the Emperor's creations. Urite convened with his brothers in whispers beneath the vaulted ceilings. "This is dire, brothers," Urite began. "We must find a way to contact the fleet." A brother replied, "Captain, I have tried. Some interference, warp-borne perhaps, shrouds us." Solkar added, "The gunship will not last long enough to reach reinforcements." Urite bowed his head. "Then we must endure. We may be here a very long time." And so they were. Days faded into weeks, weeks into months, months into centuries. Adaptation and survival. In that endless time, the sons learned of the ways of the people. The artisans of Velkara, masters of their harsh domain, gathered at a grand forge beneath the dunes, the Emberhold. The artisans were not a single guild, but three ancient families, each carrying their own sacred duty. The House of Kyrith, masters of weapons, forgers of bolters, chain blades, and relic arms designed to withstand the screaming sands and the fury of storms. The House of Varn, masters of armor, crafters of plasteel and adamantine weave, blending red iron and lost technologies to the shield warriors against the twin suns and the warp-born horrors. The House of Selene, masters of technology, custodians of salvaged relics, adapters of auspexes, vox systems, and life support systems, modifying the Emperor's sacred gifts for survival under their impossible skies. Though each bore their own proud traditions, the families worked side by side within the Emberhold, understanding that unity in craft was survival itself. They mended the armor of the suns, crafted new cooling systems, refined weapons to resist the sand's endless bite. Cloth was woven to shield Astartes' armor from the sun. Food and water were gifted freely. From necessity, from hardship, from mutual respect, a bond was born. As demonic incursions battered the veil around Velkara, the suns and the world's peacekeepers fought side by side. Together, they stood as shields against the horrors of the warp. Specialized squads formed in time. Storm riders, wielders of jump packs, striking from the heavens like meteors of holy fire. Sand snakes, masters of stealth and long-range death, vanishing into storms, striking unseen. The Ward, city defenders, masters of street and stronghold, allowing no enemy to tread the streets of Mathana. Sand rats, underhive hunters, seekers and destroyers of heresy before it could fester. The Sparks, ordinary men and women who took up arms to defend their world. Their faith burned as fiercely as any Astartes blade. The growing bond. In the beginning, there was distance. The people of Velkara revered the suns as living legends, gods clad in sand-scarred ceramite, but they also feared them. Their towering forms and the cold gleam of their bolters, a reminder of battles beyond mortal comprehension. Yet, as the suns rose and fell, and these storms came and went, something began to change. The suns did not rule. They did not demand tribute. They did not elevate themselves above the people. They worked. They repaired broken walls with their own hands. They defended caravans against raiders and sand beasts without expectation of praise. They knelt to lift fallen citizens from the rubble after storms, carrying the wounded to the healers' tents with the same care they showed their battle brothers. And people saw. The artisans of the Emberhold, once cautious, began leaving offerings of food and water at the cathedral steps. Children would gather at the edge of the forge, peeking wide-eyed as the suns hammered armor and sharpened blades. Mothers wove cloth veils sized impossibly large to shield the warriors from the worst of the twin suns. It was not immediate. It was not grand. It was slow, earned, real. When a storm broke a city gate, it was a sun who held the breach until it was prepared. When a demon broke through the weakening veil, it was the suns and the sparks, the armed citizens, who fought side by side under banners stitched from the red sands. Over time, the suns began to change as well. Formal prayers to Gilliman were joined by blessings over the forge fires. Litanies, once spoken only in High Gothic, were translated into the desert tongue so that the people might pray with them. The rigid codex formations bent to the needs of the world. The sand snakes, the storm riders, the ward. These were born not from doctrine, but from necessity. The chapter was becoming something new, something more. The artisans of the Emberhold, the peacekeepers of Mathana, the wandering traders and hive folk, all came to see the sons not as distant angels, but as brothers who bore the same sun-scorched burdens. And the sons, once warriors stranded beyond hope, began to see the people not as charges to protect, but as family worth dying for. The first aspirant. Time, as ever, demanded its price. From the 50 sons who first knelt in the Cathedral of Mathana, fewer and fewer remained with each passing cycle. 50 became 40. 40 became 35. 35 became 25. The red storms claimed some. The endless battles against the warp-born and the void curse took others. And some, wounded beyond repair, simply could not endure. The sons were not defeated. They were simply fading. There were nights, under the veiled stars of Velkara, where the brothers looked at one another and wondered, will our names vanish too, when the last of us falls? Will there be no one left to remember the oaths we swore? It was on one such night that Sokar made his slow, heavy walk to the Hill of Helms. He carried no banner, no relic blade, only a simple engraving tool strapped to his belt. His armor was sun-bleached and worn, stained by the endless dust. Cracks laced his pauldrons, and the blue of ultramar bled away into a pale, scorched white. Around his waist hung strips of cloth, woven by the artisans of Velkara, bearing the names of fallen brothers stitched in the old tongue. Sokar walked between the helms half buried in the sand, each one a story, each one a life. He knelt before the oldest helm, its ceramite chipped and faded. With slow, reverent hands, he took the engraving tool and carved a name into the inside of his left vambrace. Brother Castor. He moved to the next helm. Brother Halric. Each name was a wound reopened. Each name was a vow reforged. He would remember, even if no one else did. It was then that he saw movement at the edge of the dunes. A small figure approached, cloaked in torn desert cloth, barefoot, burned by the suns. A boy. No armor, no weapon, only will. The boy climbed the final rise, his legs trembling but unbroken, and stood before the hulking form of Sokar. For a long moment, neither spoke. The boy gazed at the hill, at the scattered helms, the forgotten banners, the storm-worn memories, and then met Sokar's eyes. He did not flinch. His voice, rough and cracked, rose into the wind. I know what they did. I know they fought for us, even before I was born. Let me stand where they stood. Let me carry their names. Sokar, scarred, exhausted, heavy with the weight of so many deaths, felt something stir in the hollow place where hope had long been silent. Without a word, he rose to his full, massive height. He reached down, unslung a worn combat knife, its edge nicked and dulled by endless battles. He placed the hilt into the boy's hands, wrapping the child's fingers around it. and he spoke. If you would carry their names, then carry this. Steel wears, flesh fails, memory endures. Thus the first aspirant was born, not through decree, not through training halls, not through tithed gene stock, but through willing sacrifice, memory, and the fire that would never die. Before they ever called themselves a chapter, they were sons. The trials. The people came forth, young men hardened by the suns and the storms, volunteered to walk the path of the warriors who had defended them for generations. The women of Velkhara, too, stood alongside the sons, as artisans, peacekeepers, healers, and defenders, keeping the fire of humanity burning even as war devoured the skies. But among the Astartes, only the strongest of young men could take the gene seed, and could walk the road into fire and memory. The sons had no great training halls, no endless armories, no fresh suits of shining plate. All they had was memory and the relics of the fallen. Apothecary Phalos, the last surviving healer, worked with sacred precision to preserve the gene seed of dead brothers. Each vial was a relic, a memory, a flame that could not be allowed to die. The implantation process was cruel, primitive compared to the standards of Macragge. Many died. Their bodies, though strong, were not always able to bear the Emperor's burden after a lifetime beneath Velkhara's twin sons. But those who survived were unbreakable. Not perfect, but enduring. Training was merciless. Days spent hauling broken relics to the dunes until their hearts nearly failed. Nights between blackened skies pelted by lightning-charged sands. Blunt weapons and hand-to-hand duels where mercy was weakness. Firing drills where every bolt was measured like drops of water in the desert. Armor was salvaged, welded together by the Emberhold's masters. No two suits alike. Weapons bore scars of 2, 3, sometimes 4 previous owners. Each bolt gun, each chainsword was living history. The final trial, the long walk. When bodies have been hardened and souls laid bare, each aspirant faced the final trial, the walk. They were stripped of all armor, all rank, all name. Clad only in simple desert cloth, they were cast alone into the great dunes. Their mission, to reach the Hill of Helms, to recover a fallen brother's helm buried by the storms, and return with it. No guidance, no rescue. Only will and memory in the unforgiving world that had forgotten them. Many did not return. The dunes swallowed them without mercy. Some were found days later by search parties, lifeless but unbroken, their hands still clutching the sand. Their names were carved into the hill alongside the fallen. But those who did return, helms hoisted upon their backs, returned as brothers. The ceremony, becoming the sons of dust. At the shattered cathedral of Methana, the surviving aspirants knelt before the last of the firstborn, Captain Ulrite, Solkar, Apothecary Phalos, and a handful of other warriors, battered but unbroken. The people gathered, standing shoulder to shoulder, red dust clinging to their worn clothing, eyes shining with pride and hope. The aspirants laid the reclaimed helmets before the altar, their armor before them painted the orange of the suns, and there, with storm and sun watching, they spoke the oath. I carry the dust of my brothers upon my skin. I carry the memory of my world within my heart. I swear by storm and flame, I am not merely born of dust. I am its son. One by one, Solkar placed the ancient helms into their hands, and so they rose. No longer aspirants, no longer strangers, but sons of dust. Among the surviving ultramarines, there was unease. They wore armor cobbled from memory. They spoke litanies not taught by the chaplaincies of Ultramar, but by the sand and the storm. They bled not for distant Terra, but for the streets of Mathana and the red plains of Velkara. And yet, when the people cried out, our sons of dust," when the children sang their names, when the artisans laid wreaths of iron and cloth upon their shoulders, the last of the firstborn understood. They had not been abandoned. They had been adopted. They were no longer merely sons of Gilliman. They stripped their blue for the orange of Velkara. They would keep one half of their pauldrons blue. They were sons of dust, forged in storm, sealed in blood, carried forever by the memory of Velkara. And none would ever take that from them. In the days after the rebirth of the Sons of Dust, a new order arose from necessity and devotion. Not all who served the chapter would bear bolt gun or blade. Some would carry the most sacred burden of all, to remember, to teach, to kindle the flame of faith when all else faded. Thus were born the Tempests. Chosen from among the people of Velkara, scholars, priests, artisans, and warriors, the Tempests became the living memory and spirit of the chapter. They were tasked with recording the names and deeds of every son, leading the sacred rites and ceremonies, spreading the truth of the Emperor's light, not as distant dogma, but as living endurance, living service, and living sacrifice. Every Tempest bore a seal of red iron upon their brow, not as a mark of ownership, but of solemn duty. They wore simple robes adorned with dust cloth sigils, each representing oaths witnessed and burdens carried. Among the surviving sons, one stepped forward to fully join the Tempests. Brother Sergeant Yama, a warrior too wounded for frontline battle, but whose spirit burned as fiercely as any blade. He laid aside his bolter. He took up the staff of names, a great iron rod upon which the names of the fallen were carved. Yama became the first Astartes Tempest. Not only a chronicler, but a keeper of faith. Among the brothers, a living bridge between the Emperor's truth and the dust-born endurance of Velkara. Through his example, it was said, the blade protects the flesh, the tempest protects the soul. The duties of a tempest were leading the litanies before battle, anointing the helms of new brothers with blessed sands, bearing witness to the long walks and the walk of the eternal, chanting the names of the fallen so none would fade into oblivion, preaching that survival itself was an act of worship, that to endure faithfully in the storm was to preserve the Emperor's will. No Tempest claimed rank. No Tempest claimed power. They served, they remembered, they endured. The Tempests are not merely priests. They are the dust bearers, the memory keepers, the storm tongues. They carry both the memory of the past and the fire of unyielding faith into every new generation. Without them, the sons would be warriors without soul. With them, the sons are eternal. The founding of the Eternal Walkers. As time ground onward, the aspirants continued their long walks across the dunes, but fewer and fewer returned. The desert, merciless and shifting, claimed even the strong, even the faithful. The sons buried what bodies they could find. They sang the names of the lost, but too many simply vanished. Their helms left undiscovered, their memory fading like mirages at the edge of sight. It was Solkar who could not abide it. He watched year by year as the number of the fallen grew. He saw the empty spaces at the ceremonies. He heard the silence where once there were oaths. And so, in the year of the great scouring, beneath twin dying suns, Solkar made his choice. He stood in the cathedral of Mathana, before the great statue of the Stormbearer, wearing his battered armor one final time. His left vambrace etched with the names of fallen brothers, his thunder spear, scarred but unbroken, resting across his back. His ancient bolt gun, its casing worn smooth by decades of war, strapped to his side. No banners hung that day. No horns were sounded. Only silence. The silence of a man stripping away the last walls between himself and duty. Captain Ulrich, still proud even as age and loss stooped his mighty frame, found Solkar at the foot of the Hill of Helms. The wind tore at them, hurling red dust against their armor. Neither man spoke at first. At last, Ulrich said, "It is not weakness to grieve, brother." Solkar shook his head. "It is not grief that drives me." He unfastened the purity seals from his chestplate, each one bearing the marks of his service, his rank, his victories. One by one he placed them into Ulrich's gauntleted hand. Finally, he reached up and tore the rank sigil from his own pauldron, the mark of a lieutenant, and placed it at Ulrich's feet. He would walk the sands not as a commander, not as an officer, but as a guardian of the lost. Ulrich, his voice low and grave, asked, "What shall we tell the people when they ask where Solkar has gone?" Solkar placed his helm upon his head, the lenses flaring one final time. He gripped his thunder spear, his bolter slung across his back, and turned his gaze to the endless desert. And he said, "Tell them I walk where they cannot, and tell them I remember." Without another word, Solkar strode into the dunes. The wind swallowed his form within minutes. The sands covered his footprints. He did not look back. From that day forward, a new right was founded among the Sons of Dust. Those too wounded, too broken, too burdened to fight in the ranks would take the long walk eternal. They would stride into the storm, armed and armored, to find the fallen aspirants, to hunt the unseen threats that festered in the endless wastes, to die in the dust or endure beyond death. They became the Eternal Walkers, neither living fully among the chapter, nor fully dead, honored, mourned, feared. And Solkar, though he was not seen for many years, would one day earn a new name whispered in awe: the Red Phantom. Not all victories are won by blade and bolter. Some are won by simply refusing to let memory die. Solkar became the first of the walkers, the first to give everything, not for glory, not for conquest, but for the bond of brothers in the dust they called home. Thus the sons of dust endure. Thus memory walks beside them always. A new era. Time passed. The dust did not claim all. Where once there was only survival, faith now took root. Not for the worship of distant gods, but for reverence, for memory, for endurance, for the sacred bond between brothers and the dust they called home. The Emberhold thrived, its forges bright against the darkening storms. Families pledged themselves to the sacred crafts, armor reforged from the relics of the fallen, weapons restored to sing the Emperor's wrath anew, names and oaths carved deep into stone, iron, and soul. The Tempests rose fully, leading ceremonies, recording deeds, preaching that survival itself was the Emperor's truest litany. Only a few firstborn sons of Gilliman still walked Velkara's red sands. Captain Ulrite, the burdened shield. Apothecary follows, the last preserver. Tempest Yama, the living memory. And Solkar, unseen, walking where only memory dares to follow. They were old now, worn by time, but unbowed. The sons of dust were strong. Their world stood proud. Their people endured. For a time, it seemed even the storms had been tamed. And yet, one evening, as the twin suns burned low against the horizon, Captain Urite stood upon the walls of Methana, gazing out across the endless dunes. The wind howled, low and mournful, and there, at the edge of sight, he saw them. Shapes, figures, armored giants, but wrong. Clad not in the blessed hues of Velkara or the old blue of Ultramar, but in black. Black, rimmed with gold. Their weapons glinted cruelty beneath the dying suns. Their banners, if any remained, were tattered shadows. They marched not as brothers, but as executioners. Ulrite narrowed his eyes, his hand unconsciously falling to the hilt of his blade. No horns sounded. No oaths were sworn. Only the whisper of the dust, and the first cold certainty that the storm had come again. That is the end of part 1. I hope whoever sees this really enjoyed it. I've worked for months to forge my own chapter, and I gotta tell you, I'm quite proud of where it is at now. This was meant to serve as a broad introductory, with enough content to stimulate, but not enough to completely satisfy you. There will be many, many more entries into this saga, into the history of the Sons of Dust. If you have any gripes, anything you notice where, hey, that wouldn't work in the universe, or this is weird, or even any criticism, I don't even care if it's harsh or not very well, it's fine if you're just being mean. I'll still read it. because you may give me ideas. If not, I will correct stuff. Although you have to give me some sort of liberties with what can and cannot happen within this time and on this world. If there were any details that stood out to you as, well, they wouldn't have that, or this wouldn't happen, a lot of it does begin to be explained in the next script that I'm writing already. I bid you all farewell. Until next time. By dust, by flame, by memory, we endure.